Dadati Swapadantikam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham karoti vachanam pangam langyate giri yat kripatamam vande Shri Gurudeen Taranam Paramanandam Madhavam. Prem Kishore Prabhu, are you now able to hear me?
Yes, Prabhu. Sorry, I
Oh,
was. Thank you.
very good. So we'll resume from verse 23 of the third chapter, fourth canto. Satvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam Yadyato Hayadokshajame Namasa Vidiyate. I am always engaged in offering obeisances to Lord Vasudeva in pure Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is always pure consciousness in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as Vasudeva, is revealed without any covering. Lord Shiva is, in these set of verses, giving Sati Devi reasons why she should not go to the yagya of her father. So, quick recap that in verse 16, and most of the reasons given by Lord Shiva are in response to either explicit or implicit points made by Sati as to why she should go. So in verse 16, Lord Shiva responds to Sati Devi's point where she says that one should always visit friends and family. And Lord Shiva says, yes, it is true, but not if that person is a fault finder. Then in verse 17, and this is an implicit objection from Sati Devi, she says that, yes, you should not go to the house of a fault finder, but my father is not a fault finder because he has wisdom. And Lord Shiva says, maybe he has wisdom, but the 6 qualities of wisdom become false if the person has pride. In the verse 18, Lord Shiva responds to Sati Devi's point that this is again an implicit point, that why would you think that my father would be averse to me? Even low-minded people have affection for their children. And Lord Shiva in verse 18, he says that if the father is disturbed in mind, then it does not matter whether the person is high-minded or low-minded, one should not go to the person. And the reason that the Acharya says that it is from mind that everything else is coming. The affection for children, the desire to protect children, all that is coming from one's mental conception. So if a person is disturbed in mind, so Lord Shiva says that one should not go even to a father's house if he is disturbed in mind and looks at the guests with angry eyes. So regardless of what the relationship is, it is enforced through the mind, and if the mind is disturbed, then the relationship becomes suspect. Then Sati Devi may say that, okay, he may speak harshly to me, but I will tolerate it because I am his daughter and I am tolerant. And Lord Shiva says that you think so, but actually the hurt that is caused by harsh words is much more painful than the physical hurt. especially if those harsh words are coming from a loved ones. If an enemy insults you, then you can, it still hurts. So if an enemy throws arrows at you, then it's a physical injury, and then you will recoup. If the enemy speaks badly with you, you will feel bad, but then you will think, after all, this person is inimical to me. But when a person that you love and respect speaks harshly to you, Lord Shiva says that grief continues to rend the heart day and night, because the person relives that over and over again. Then Sati Devi says that I'm his favorite. I will go alone. You need not come. And Lord Shiva in verse 20 says that even though you are your father's favorite, because you're connected to me, you will be dishonored. So the love that your father has for you as his favorite daughter is eclipsed by the hatred that he has for me. So just like you can put as much sugar as you want in milk, but if you put just a drop of lime juice, the milk will curdle. So the love that Daksha has for you will curdle because of the hatred that he has for me. So Sati Devi, then again, this is an implicit point that you are biased against my father because you are hostile to him. And Lord Shiva says that I am not hostile to him, he is hostile to me. And he gives the reason, because one who is conducted by false ego cannot tolerate the opulence of the self-realized persons. So that is the difference between Daksha and Lord Shiva. Daksha is conducted by false ego, and Lord Shiva, in his service to Lord Vishnu, is self-realized. So he says that I have no envy to your father, but I recognize that your father has envy to me. So then Sati Devi may say that I accept that you do not hate my father. So she is accepting the premise that Lord Shiva is saying, that he's equipoised. He said, I accept that you do not hate my father, but he is your father-in-law, and you should have reason to respect him. So this is the point that Lord Shiva now addresses in this verse, in verse 22. And we'll here Daksha says, Lord Shiva says that the reason that he did not stand up at the time when Daksha came was not to disrespect him, but simply because he was not even aware of the presence of Daksha. So Lord Shiva makes this point that people who greet each other based on the bodily consciousness are unintelligent. Elevated persons, they offer respects to the super soul within. And since I was absorbed in meditating on the super soul, even if I did not glance at Daksha, he was still respected by me, because the same super soul is present in Daksha. And if Lord Shiva is offering super soul respect, he is offering respect to all embodied beings, including Daksha. So Lord Shiva is saying there is no fault in me not standing up to respect him, because I was already respecting him. And I was actually respecting him at a much deeper level, not just based on bodily concept that you are my father-in-law and I am the son-in-law, but at a deeper level, that he is a soul with a relationship of the super soul residing in his body. So Lord Shiva says that I was absorbed in offering respects to the super soul within. So Acharya said that at this point, Sati Devi could say, how could you be in samadhi at this point? So which means that he's there, it's a social gathering, and Lord Shiva is saying that I was in samadhi at the point. So Sati Devi could ask, how is it possible that you were in samadhi at that point? So Lord Shiva here says that I'm always engaged in offering obeisances to Lord Vasudev in pure Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is always pure consciousness in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as Vasudev, is revealed without any covering. So the pure Antakarna is called Vasudev with a short a. And because the Supreme Lord appears without coverings in that Antakarna, he is famous as Vasudev. So what is Antakarna? Antakarna is basically the false ego, intelligence, mind, and Chitta Shakti. False ego in the mode of ignorance, intelligence in the mode of passion, mind in the mode of goodness, and Chitta Shakti in the mode of Shuddha Sattva or pure goodness. So, because this belongs to the Lord, so when Lord Shiva is saying that he is Vasudev because he appears in Vasudev, which means that this belongs to him, so he is independent to appear in it at any time he wants. So Lord Shiva is saying that being in samadhi is not dependent on me. It is dependent on Krishna. When Krishna chooses to appear in my antakarna, I am there to serve him. Now, Krishna cannot be bound by a rule saying that you only appear at this time, you only appear at that time. So, Vishwanath Chakravarti says that he uses this opportunity to give a little bit of discourse on Vasudev. So he says that the spiritual Antakarna, Vasudeva Sattvam, is called Vasudev. Or another meaning is that the spiritual state Sattvam, composed of the action of Chitta Shakti, Vishuddham, is the producer of the Lord's appearance, Vasudev. Because the spiritual mind or the state composed of Chitta Shakti is where Vasudev appears. So the meaning of Vasudev is he who makes his appearance in the state of Vasudev. And he appears in pure Antakarna because the Lord dwells Vasati. Therefore, the Antakarna is called Vasu. And because it is completely spiritual, it is called Deva. That is the derivation of the word Vasu Deva. So, Lord Shiva addresses Krishna as Adhoksaja here to indicate that he's beyond the senses. So we use our senses to control things around us. But Krishna is beyond the senses, which means that Lord Shiva with his senses cannot control the appearance of Krishna in his Antakarna. So whenever Krishna decides to appear, he appears. And that is when Lord Shiva serves him with his consciousness. So Srila Prabhupada is a fairly lengthy purport, and he also builds upon this term of Vasudev consciousness. So I'll highlight the main points in the purport. Srila Prabhupada says that the jiva is intrinsically pure and never contaminated. Asangohayam purushaha. This state of existence is called Shuddha Sattva. Since the Shuddha Sattva is existence is under the direct action of the internal potency, in this state of material consciousness, in this state, activities of material consciousness stop. Mam chayu vibicharena. Also confirms that anyone who is engaged in unadulterated devotional service to the Lord is at once elevated to the position of pure Brahman. Shuddha Sattva is also called Vasudev because in this stage, the Supreme Person appears. And Vishwanath Chakravarti, he gives a elaborate technical description of it. Then Prabhupada says that Jiva Goswami has very nicely described this Vasudev or Shuddha Sattva in Bhagavad Sandarbha. He explains that a Stotra Shata, 108, is added to the name of the spiritual master to indicate one who is situated in Shuddha Sattva or in the transcendental state of Vasudev. So in Bhagavad Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami, he gives the qualities of Shuddha Sattva. I did not get time to find that part. Prabhupada does not give the reference where in Bhagavad Sandarbha. So I glanced through it, but I could not find it. But just reading the table of contents, there is a section in which Jiva Goswami, he gives the various qualities of Shuddha Sattva. And my guess is that there are 108 qualities that the Shuddha Sattva has. So saying Astotra Shata is synonymous to saying Shuddha Sattva. So when the prefix Ashostra Satra is applied, then it is indicating that the personality is situated in Shuddha Sattva, not in the mode of goodness, but in the mode of pure goodness or transcendence. So generally applied to acharyas, to spiritual masters, etc. I do see sometimes, and I don't know if there is a scriptural basis of it, that sometimes people will say 1008 or 10,008. So I don't know if that is just saying that 1008 is bigger than 108, so I'm more elevated, or there is some spiritual understanding. But this is interesting. I wasn't aware of that. This was something that I used to always wonder, that why is the name 108 added, number 108 added, and I had gotten different explanations, probably which are all part of it, that 18 is an auspicious number, and there are some places where 108 is an auspicious number in the scriptures. But Srila Prabhupada quotes Jiva Goswami here to give another, which I feel is a more comprehensive explanation, that the 108 refers to the Shuddha Sattva. Whether it refers to the 108 qualities of Shuddha Sattva or some other aspect, but it represents Shuddha Sattva. So the prefix is used to indicate that the person is situated in transcendence. So the essential point made by Lord Shiva here is that I could be in Samadhi when the yajna, in the company of everybody during the time of yajna, because my being in Samadhi is a benediction by Krishna. It's not in my control. So at that time, he chose to appear in my antakarna. So I was merged in his consciousness. And by being merged in his consciousness, I was already paying respect to Daksha. Because when you're paying respect to Krishna, you're paying respect to Paramatma. When you're paying respect to Paramatma, you're paying respect to every living entity. Okay, so we'll go to the next verse, 24. Tatte niriksho nupitapi dehakrad dakshamamadvit tadanu vartaschaye yo vishvasrak yagyagatam varorumam anagasam durvacha sakarotiraha. Therefore, you should not see your father, although he is the giver of your body, because he and his followers are envious of me. Because of this envy, O most worshipable one, he has insulted me with cruel words, although I am innocent. So Lord Shiva says that Daksha is Dehakrat. Dehakrat means that he gave you this body. Vishwanath Chakravarti says that Dehakrat also means one who cuts the body. So Lord Shiva is cautioning Sati that her father may be the cause of her death also. It also could mean Dehakrat means that Daksha would be the cause of his own death. So depending on where Dehakrat is applied, it could apply to Sati that he would be the cause of the death of Sati, or he could be the cause of his own death. So Lord Shiva is indicating both over here, that if you go, then your death and the death of your father will happen. Srila Prabhupada says that for a woman, both the husband and father are equally worshipable. The husband is the protector of a woman during her youthful life, whereas the father is the protector during her childhood. Thus, both are worshipable. But especially the father, because he is the giver of the body. Lord Shiva reminded Sati, your father is undoubtedly worshipable, even more than I am, but take care. For although he is the giver of your body, he may also be the taker of your body. Because when you see your father, he may insult you because of your association with me. And insult from a relative is worse than death, especially when one is well situated. Okay. Verse 25. Yadi vrajashyasi atyahaya madvacho bhadram bhavatya natato bhavishyati sambhavitasya swa. In spite of this instruction, if in spite of this instruction you decide to go, neglecting my words, the future will not be good for you. You are most respectable, and when you are insulted by your relative, this insult will immediately be equal to death. So Lord Shiva was earlier on speaking indirectly. Now he speaks directly. So it is said that when one is speaking about matters of import, one should not hide behind words. One should speak plainly, simply, and directly so that there is no opportunity for any misunderstanding. When the guru is giving instructions, when one is trying to correct somebody, sometimes when we try to correct somebody, we hide it in so many words that the person has no understanding that are we um, uh, what exactly are we doing. So there are some times when it helps to speak in a roundabout in a roundabout way. It is mostly done in humor, it's mostly done in affection, in love. But when one is being given instructions, then one needs to speak clearly and directly. Srila Prabhupada would say that that Bruhas I forget the phrase he used, but basically he said, speak directly, but not in an insulting way. So here Lord Shiva now is speaking directly to Sati Devi. That in spite of whatever I've told you, if you go, then the result will not be good for you. The insult will immediately be equal to death. So he's saying that you will have to give up your body. So this is the end of the third chapter. It was divided in 3 sections. The first 4 verses talked about the sacrifice that Daksha began. Then in the next 10 verses, we see Sati Devi convincing Lord Shiva as to why she should go to the sacrifice. And in the concluding 11 verses, we see Lord Shiva giving reasons to Sati Devi why she should not go to the sacrifice. So I'll pause here and see if there is any comments.
Another question, Prabhu, just a remark. I always always had this question also about the 108. Why they say even in the Brahma Dhavani we say this Asatoma Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta or Bhakti Vedanta. I was always wondering what is this 108? Now we know.
Yes, it was. It was pretty enlightening to me also. Somehow I had done searches for this in the past. Somehow this never came up. But and if somebody has the time, if they can find the specific reference in Bhagavad Sandarbha, I have a hard copy. I don't have a soft copy, so it's not easy for me to do a search. I would have to read it, which I should, but I haven't read it at this point. But if somebody has a soft copy or somebody has read it and gives a specific reference, so that would be even better.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hari Bol, Prabhu.
Prabhu, sorry, I just now joined. Can you please, if you don't mind, can you repeat that 108? Is it Astotra Satas, something like that? Or like, can you give, please?
So Prabhupada in the purport, he gives an explanation of Astotra Satra, that why does 108 come? This is in the purport of verse 23. And he quotes Bhagavad Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami's, that Jiva Goswami explains that Astotra Satra refers to Shuddha Sattva. So Shuddha Sattva meaning that it has either it has 108 qualities that make it Shuddha Sattva, or there is something else. So Prabhupada just makes a reference to the fact that it is given in Bhagavad Sandarbha. Takeaway is that 108 refers to Shuddha Sattva, which is why it is prefixed before the name of acharyas and gurus to indicate that they're situated in Shuddha Sattva.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no more discussion, then we can start on the 4th chapter, 4th canto. Title of this chapter is Sati Quits a Body. And here we see that Sati, ignoring the forbiddance of her husband, goes to the sacrifice of Daksha. And then she is disrespected by her father. And then in anger, she criticizes him and gives up her body. So the the chapter has 34 verses, but the 13 verses in which Sati condemns Daksha are probably the most instructive, because uh, condemnation is another way of saying, is talking about the do's and the don'ts. So when Sati condemns Daksha, she's essentially giving us instructions that this is what you should not do. And she also pairs it with the qualities of Lord Shiva. So she's also giving us guidance that this is what you should do or what you should appreciate. So it's a very instructive chapter from the perspective of practicing devotees. We'll begin with verse 1, 441. Maitre vacha etavad Veerarama Shankaraha Patnyanganashama.
Sorry, Prabhu, we cannot able to hear anything. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, 1 minute, Prabhu. Prabhu is rejoining.
Did something happen from my end, Prem Kishore Prabhu?
Yep. Yeah, Prabhu. Your other thread is open, but looks like you joined from the personal account.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll go over the verse, first verse, 441. Maitre vacha etavaduktva virama shankaraha patnyanganashamahe ubhyatra chintayan suhurdidroksha parisang.
Prabhu, looks like you're again in and out.
Okay, I'm joining back from my cell phone. I got a new laptop, so I thought that would take care of the Zoom issue, but apparently it did not. It still continues, which is interesting that I have so many Zoom calls. This is the only one that has problem. So I have so many Zoom calls at work and at other places, and they go through fine. So there is something very mystical happening with this Zoom call. It needs to go through my phone. Okay, so reading the translation of 441. The sage Maitreya said, Lord Shiva was silent after speaking to Sati, seeing her between decisions. Sati was very much anxious to see her relatives at her father's house, But at the same time, she was afraid of Lord Shiva's warning. Her mind unsettled, she moved in and out of the room as a swing moves this way and that way. So, etava duktva. So Lord Shiva, having said this chintayan. Chintayan means an understanding for certain. Patni anga nasham. That sati is going to be destroyed. Ubayatra. Either way, whether she stays or whether she goes, Virama Shankara. Lord Shiva became silent. Then Dvida Ashasa. Sati was divided Suhurta Didrishu. Desiring to see her relatives, Nishkramati, she left the house, and Parisankita Shiva. And in fear of Lord Shiva, then Nirivasati. She re-entered the house. So Lord Shiva understood that Sati would destroy herself in any case, whether he stopped her or whether he allowed her to go. So desiring to see her relatives, she went out of the house, and at the same time being afraid of disobeying Lord Shiva, she entered the house. So in this way, she was tossed on the horns of dilemma, or as the analogy is given, like a swing, it goes back and forth. She went outside and inside. So that analogy is used to show that the conflict was of equal strength. Her desire to go and her desire to see the relatives. And a desire to obey Lord Shiva. Sorry. So Prabhupada's purport says that Sati's mind was divided about whether to go to her father's house or obey the orders of Lord Shiva. The struggle between the two decisions was so strong that she was pushed from one side of the room to another, and she began to move just like a pendulum of a clock. Now, why did Lord Shiva think that even if she stayed back, she would be destroyed? Because he understood that the force that is driving her to go to that yagya was so strong that it would deprive her of her will to live or the desire to seek happiness in the life. So both ways, he is foreseeing that there is imminent destruction. Verse 2. Suhurd didriksha pratigata durmanaha sneha drudatya ashrukala vihivala avam bhavanya apratipurusham rusha pradhyakshayatvi vaikshat jat veputuhu. Sati felt very sorry at being forbidden to go see her relatives at her father's house, and due to affection for them, tears fell from her eyes. Shaking and very much afflicted, she looked at her uncommon husband, Lord Shiva, as if she were going to blast him with her vision. So Sati Devi was very upset at Lord Shiva for putting her in this quandary. And she was so angry that she was looking at him with fire in her eyes, as if she would burn him into ashes. So Shiva also refers to Atma. So the acharyas say it actually means both. That she was looking angrily at Lord Shiva to burn him to ashes, But Shiva also means self. That she was looking angrily at herself, desiring to burn herself into action. Or another way of understanding it is that the consequence of her disobeying Lord Shiva will destroy both. It will destroy the Guru and it will destroy self. So, destroy Guru in the sense it will destroy the relationship with the Guru. So, we see that in Sati Devi, that because she is disobeying Lord Shiva, then she is destroying her relationship with Lord Shiva, who is her spiritual master, and eventually she will destroy her own self. Now, one might say that why did Lord Shiva not be more explicit in his forbidding Sati Devi? And that actually is not the mode of the gurus in Satoguna. And Lord Shiva is the perfect guru. So what does the perfect guru do? That he clearly gives the options to the disciple. He clearly gives the weighs the pros and the cons, but he does not impose the will.
Yeah.
Prem Kishore Prabhu, you may want to mute yourself.
I'll go there.
So we see that in the pastime of Prahlad Maharaj, that after he had instructed his classmates, he says that, why don't you reflect on this and then decide the best course of action? We see the same in Bhagavad Gita, that Krishna instructs Arjun and then he says, Yatha chasi tatha kuru. Now, that does not mean that some people quote that verse saying that Krishna wants us to do whatever we want. He says, Yatha chasi tatha kuru. Right? That does not mean that. But Krishna is being the perfect guru. He's saying that after I have given you the knowledge, the pros and cons, now you should act as per your desire in a way that works best for you. Because that is the nature, that is the only way that the instructions will be internalized. If they are accepted out of fear or force, then one will quickly disobey those instructions at the first opportunity. We see Shukracharya, right, in the Vamandev pastime, he was trying to impose his will on Bali Maharaj. He was forcibly saying, he was cursing him, if you don't follow my instruction, this will happen to you. He became a fly and entered the pot of Bali Maharaj so that the water would not come, so that he could not take the vow. Right? So that is the mode of passion and ignorance, where the Guru tries to instruct forcefully, but Lord Shiva, he is the perfect Guru in that way. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada, he explains the meaning of aprati purusham that appears in the verse. He explains it in two ways. So aprati purusham could mean that one who is equal to everyone. It could also mean that one who has no equal. And both these are valid in terms of Sati Devi's reactions when Lord Shiva does not give her permission to go. Srila Prabhupada said the word aprati purusham used in this verse means one who has no equal. Lord Shiva has no equal in the material world in regard to equality towards everyone. His wife Sati knew that her husband was equal towards everyone. So why in this case was he so unkind to his wife that he did not allow her to go to her father's house? So Lord Shiva is aprati purusham, that is equal to everyone. And Prabhupada is saying Sati Devi is complaining that if you're equal to everyone, you're famous for being merciful. So you should be equally merciful to me. If you remember in the last chapter, Sati Devi, she addressed Lord Shiva as Neelkantham, saying that out of mercy, you drank the poison. So show mercy to me. So same point is being made, that if you're merciful to everyone, you should be merciful to me. So this distressed her more than she can tolerate, and she looked at her husband as if she were ready to blast him with her vision. In other words, since Lord Shiva is Atma, Shiva also means Atma, it is indicated that Sati was prepared to commit suicide. Another meaning of the word Apratipurusham is the personality who has no rival. Since Lord Shiva could not be persuaded to give her permission, Sati took shelter of a woman's last weapon, weeping, which forces her husband to agree with the proposal of his wife. Doesn't seem to have worked on Lord Shiva though. Okay, verse 3. Tato vinishvasya sati vihayatam shokena roshena chadyutarida pritroraga strain vimudir grahan premnat manoyo hridamadad satam priya. Thereafter, Sati left her husband, Lord Shiva, who had given her half his body due to affection. Breathing very heavily because of anger and bereavement, she went to the house of her father. This less intelligent act was due to her being a weak woman. So, between the two conflicting desires that she had, to see her family and fear of Lord Shiva, her husband, the desire to see her family was stronger. So it said that she gave up Shiva. So no, she didn't give him up, but she gave up Shiva in the sense she gave up the instructions that he had given, and with a grieving heart. So Dyuta went to the house of her father. So Sati had received her body from her father, but here it is mentioned that Lord Shiva had also given his body, half of his body to her out of affection. Yet, despite that, because her intelligence was deluded by her feminine nature, she went. So Prabhupada explains what does this giving half the body means. He says that according to the Vedic conception of family life, the husband gives half his body to his wife. That's why the wife is known as Ardhangani, half the body. And the wife gives half of her body to her husband. In other words, a husband without a wife or a wife without a husband is incomplete. Vedic marital relationships existed between Lord Shiva and Sati. But sometimes due to weakness, a woman becomes very attracted by the members of her father's house. And this happened to Sati. In this verse, it is specifically mentioned that she wanted to leave such a great husband as Shiva because of her womanly weakness. In other words, womanly weaknesses exist even in relationships between husband and wife. Okay, verse 4. Tam anvagachan druta vikramam satim ekam trineta churaha saha sarasaha saparshadayaksha maniman madadyaha puro vrishendras tarasagata vyata. When they saw Sati leaving alone very rapidly, thousands of Lord Shiva's disciples, headed by Maniman and Mad, quickly followed her with the bull Nandi in front and accompanied by the Yakshas. So why did Sati travel rapidly? Vishwanath Chakravarti says that she was scared that Shiva would stop her. So she did not want to give him an opportunity to stop. So she followed rapidly. And the followers of Lord Shiva were alarmed. So, Gyata, Vyatatha. Since they were followers of Lord Shiva, they could understand his desires, that he did not want Sati to leave alone. So, Srila Prabhupada, so they were alarmed that disobeying the instructions of the Lord, she was leaving. They were also alarmed because personalities as great as Shiva and Sati, they travel with an entourage. And especially Sati Devi being a woman, it was expected for her to be protected. Now, Sati Devi does not need any protection. She is Durga Devi. So it is under her protection that the material world is running. But this is the pastime of Sati Devi acting as the wife of Lord Shiva. So she is acting as an ordinary woman. Srila Prabhupada says that Gata Vyatatha could mean both. Gata Vyatatha means that it created fear in the followers of Lord Shiva. It could also mean, when applied to Sati, that she left without any fear. So quickly, she was followed by Maniman. Maniman is a Yaksha, Maniman and Mada, and they are followers of Shiva. Later on, Maniman appears as the person who actually will arrest Bhrigu Muni. So he follows Sati Devi. So when Sati Devi heard the instructions of Shiva, they did not take root in her heart. And we see that happening when the heart is covered. For instance, in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, we see the Yagika Brahmanas in 23rd chapters. They are described as Shanvatu Apina Shushuruva, that they heard but did not hear. Shanvatu Apina Shushuruva. So they heard the cowherd boys saying that Lord Shiva is asking, Lord Krishna, or Krishna is asking for some food. But they simply ignored. They heard, but they did not hear. The reason is that their heart was covered with fear of Kamsa, and really it was covered with petty desires, Karmakanda. In the 2nd canto, Sukdev Goswami describes the materialist as Pashyanti Apina Pashyati. Pashyan Apina Pashyati. That they see but do not see. So here we see that Sati Devi, she heard but did not hear. So in Ramayana, we see the case of when Lord Ram, he slays Vali. I'm sorry. In Ramayana, we see this example of the personality of Tara. Right? Tara is loyal to her husband Vali, but she is more loyal to Dharma. When Vali is vanquishing Sugriv, she advises him against it, because she says this is adharmic. Again in Ramayana, we see the example of Mandodari and Ravan. Mandodari, even though she was completely chaste to Ravan, she kept advising him to free Sita Devi because she was more loyal to Dharma. So they were giving good advice to the husbands, but the husbands were hearing but not hearing. So Srila Prabhupada explains that a chaste wife can be considered to be pramad. So the pramad has two meanings, the word pramad. It means enlightening as well as maddening. So when the husband listens to the good advice of the wife, then she is Pramad, enlightening. When the husband looks upon the wife as an object of enjoyment, then she becomes Pramad, which is maddening or bewildering. So the wife is situated in the right position, but because the husband is not able to appreciate her, she becomes the cause of his bewilderment. So here we see it in the opposite. Lord Shiva is properly situated, but because Sati Devi is not able to appreciate his position, he becomes the cause of her bewilderment. Now, later on, we'll see that Sati Devi also has a hidden agenda of why she wants to go, which actually is even higher than the instructions of Lord Shiva. But for now, the Acharyas, they are using this pastime to give us the instructions that the Lord wants us to derive from this pastime. Srila Prabhupada says Sati was going very fast so that she might not be checked by her husband. But she was immediately followed by many thousands of disciples of Lord Shiva, headed by the Yakshas, Maniman, and Mada. The word Gatavyata used in this connection means without fear. Sati did not care that she was going alone, therefore she was almost fearless. The word Anuchara is always also significant, for it indicates that Lord Shiva's disciples were always ready to sacrifice everything for Lord Shiva. All of them could understand the desire of Lord Shiva, who did not want Sati to go alone. Anuchara means those who can immediately understand the purpose of their master. Okay, verse 5. Tam sarika kanduka darpanambuja sweta tupatra sragadibihi gitayaner dundubi Shankavenubi Vrishendramaropya Vitankita Yayu. The disciples of Lord Shiva arranged for Sati to be seated on the back of a bull and gave her the bird which was her pet. They bore a lotus flower, a mirror, and all such paraphernalia for her enjoyment, and covered her with a great canopy. Followed by a single singing party with drums, conch shells, and bugles, the entire procession was as pompous as a royal parade. So, in the conjunction with the previous verse, we can understand that the followers of Lord Shiva also understood his mind, that Lord Shiva did not want any disrespect to come to his wife. Because if Lord Shiva was vindictive, that Sati Devi has disobeyed my orders and gone, then his followers would not have served Sati Devi in this way. That they seated her on the back of Nandi, which is Lord Shiva's carrier. Then Sarika is a bird. So the Acharyas say they gave her the bird because generally when people are disturbed with their favorite pet, they become a little, it has a soothing effect. So they gave her her favorite pet. And then they were playing of instruments, singing and dancing, which indicates that this is also something that Sati Devi liked. Then the white umbrella and the other items indicate her exalted royal status. So she left in a pompous royal parade. Okay, verse 6. Abrahma Ghosharjita Yagya Vaishasham Viprasijustam Vibudescha Sarvashah Mridarvaya Kanchan Darbachamar Charambir Nishrastabhandam Yagyam Samavisitam. She then reached her father's house, where the sacrifice was being performed, and entered the arena where everyone was chanting the Vedic hymns. The great sages, Brahmanas, the demigods were all assembled there. And there were many sacrificial animals, as well as pots made of clay, stone, gold, grass, and skin, which were all requisite for the sacrifice. So in the next 5 verses, we see that how Sati Devi gets a cold response. So she enters into the Yagyasthal, the place of sacrifice, that is being described as Urjita. Urjita was splendid, completely. Means it was fully splendid. How? By the chanting of the Vedic mantras. Now, in addition, the Vedas, the sacrificial place had the Vaishesham. So Vaishesham are the animals that are meant to be killed in the sacrifice. Another meaning is that the place was a battle, a competition between rival scriptural opinions, with each side desiring to win. So it was attended by devas as well as Brahma Rishis, and there were vessels made of clay and other materials. So Srila Prabhupada says that when learned sages and Brahmins assembled to chant Vedic mantras, some of them also engage in arguing about the conclusions of the scriptures. Thus, some of the sages and the Brahmins were arguing, and some of them were chanting the Vedic mantra. So the entire atmosphere was surcharged with transcendental sound vibrations. So that is one meaning of Vaishesham. Now, this argument does not create negativity. It does not create hatred. These are simply philosophical arguments. Some Brahman will say this is the proper way of chanting this mantra, or this mantra should come before this mantra, or you should have done this process. Another Brahman will quote a scripture saying, no, under these circumstances, it is better to start with these mantras. So they're all so these are all Brahmins who are expert in the scriptures. So just like when Kshatriyas meet together, even in friendship, they engage in battle. They will show their strength of arms. They will mock fight with one another, but it just increases their affection for one another. Similarly, when Brahmins come, this is a battle they engage in. Right? So Prabhupada says that it actually makes that environment transcendental, surcharged with transcendental sound vibration. And then he says simplest is to perform Sankirtan Yagya. No arguments over there. Even there is sometimes arguments that, why do we say Krishna first? Somewhere it is said it is Hare Ram, why don't we say Hare Ram, Ram? But not many arguments. There's not much you can argue with the chanting of the Maha Mantra. So Prabhupada says simplest is to perform Sankirtan Yagya. Then the second meaning of Vaishesham is regarding the sacrifice of animals. Prabhupada addresses that in his purport, that these animals were not meant to be killed. Rather, the great sages and realized souls assembled there were performing yagyas, and the realization was tested by animal sacrifice. Just as in modern science, tests are made on animals to determine the effectiveness of a particular medicine. The Brahmins entrusted with the performance of the yagyas were very realized souls. And to test the realization, an old animal was offered in the fire and rejuvenated. So Prabhupada mentions this at different places also, that when there is mention of animal sacrifices in the Veda, later on, much later on, in the Kali Yuga, it evolved to that people would sacrifice animals and eat them. But Prabhupada explains that the true purpose of the animal sacrifice was that an old animal would be sacrificed and it would appear out of the fire of the Vedas rejuvenated. And if it did, then it meant that the Vedas, the yagya was a success. The mantras had been chanted properly, the procedures had been done correctly. So even in Karmakanda yagyas, This is mostly in Karma Kand actually, where the Purohit wants to demonstrate to the Jajman. So the Jajman is the benefactor and the Purohit is the Karma Kand priest. He wants to say that, look, you paid me all this money to do the yajna. Now, you will also want to see proof that the yajna was successful. So here's the proof that I will sacrifice an animal and it will appear rejuvenated. So then the Jajman becomes happy and gives the Purohit opulent dakshina. Okay. Verse 7. Tamagatam tattana kaschanadraya vimanitam yagya krito bhayajana rite swasharvai jananim cha sadraha prema shrukanthayah parishasvajur muda. When Sati with the followers reached the arena, because all the people assembled were afraid of Daksha, none of them received her well. No one welcomed her but her mother and sister. Sisters who with tears in their eyes and with glad faces welcomed her and talked with her very pleasingly. So Prabhupada says that the mother and sisters of Sati could not follow the others who did not receive Sati very well. Due to natural affection, they immediately welcomed her with tears in their eyes and with loving feelings. This shows that women as a class are very soft-hearted. Their natural affection and love cannot be checked by artificial means. Although the men present there were very learned brahmanas and demigods, they were afraid of the superior Daksha. And because they knew that the welcoming Sati would displease him, although in their minds they wanted to receive her, they could not do so. Women are naturally soft-hearted, but men are sometimes very hard-hearted. Next verse. Saudarya samprashna samarthavartaya matra cha matra swasharbhischa sadaram datam saparyam varamasanam chasa na data pitra pratinandita sati. Although she was received by her sisters and mothers, she did not reply to their words of reception. And although she was offered a seat and presents, she did not accept anything. For her father neither talked with her nor welcomed her by asking about her welfare. So Prabhupada says that Sati did not accept the greetings offered by her sisters and mother, for she was not at all satisfied by her father's silence. Sati was the youngest child of Daksha, and she knew that she was his pet. But now, because of her association with Lord Shiva, Daksha forgot all about his affection for his daughter, and this very much aggrieved her. The material bodily conception is so polluted that even upon slight provocation, all our relationships of love and affection become nullified. This is a powerful point Srila Prabhupada is making. That at one end, we invest so much in the relationships that are predicated on bodily conception. On the other hand, they are so fragile that even based on the slightest provocation, they become nullified. Actually, they sometimes become opposite. Nullified means neutral, but they actually become opposite. We see in the case of Daksha, that is affection turned to hatred to Sati. Even when he sees her later on, ready to give up her body, he doesn't stop. So what kind of a father will not stop the daughter when she is committing suicide right in front of him? So it indicates the depth of hatred in him for her. So Prabhupada says bodily relationships are so transient that even though one is affectionate towards one, a slight provocation will terminate that intimacy. So it is ironical that at one point we invest so much in a bodily relationship, and at the other point we can see that they are so tenuous. Okay. So I'll do maybe a couple of more verses and then we'll stop. Rudrabhagam tamavekshya chadvaram pitra cha deva kritahelanam vibhav anadrita yagya sadasya dhi shivari chukopalokan ivadakshati rusha. Present in the arena of sacrifice, Sati saw that there was no oblations for her husband, Lord Shiva. Next, she realized that not only had her father failed to invite Lord Shiva, but when he saw Lord Shiva's exalted wife, Daksha did not receive her either. Thus she became greatly angry, so much so that she looked at her father as if she were going to burn him with her eyes. So sometimes back, Sati was looking at Lord Shiva with angry eyes. Now she's looking at her father with angry eyes. So when the relationships are based on material principles, they get terminated at slight provocation. Now the opposite is when the relationships are built on the spiritual principle. Then they are resilient and they grow. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in the Jharkhand forest, then the animals that were by nature envious of one another, the tiger and the deer, they were dancing together. So that was because the relationship moved from material to a spiritual conception. Srila Prabhupada was mentioned that universal brotherhood is only possible when everyone acknowledges that there is a single father. Otherwise, it is destined to fail. In the purport, Prabhupada says that by offering oblation in the fire while chanting the Vedic mantra Swaha, one offers respect to all the demigods, great sages and pitas, including Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu. It is customary that Shiva is one of those who are offered respect. So, generally the mantra of the deity is chanted and the word Swaha is said. But what Sati personally saw that the Brahman did not utter the mantra offering oblations to Lord Shiva. Namah Shivaya Swaha. She was not sorry for herself, for she was ready to come to her father's house without being invited. But she wanted to see whether or not her husband was being respected. To see her relatives, her sister and her mother was not so important. Even when she was received by her mother and sister, she did not care, for she was most concerned that her husband was being insulted in the sacrifice. When she marked the insult, she became greatly angry, and she looked at her father so angrily that Daksha appeared to burn in the vision. So Prabhupada reveals the real reason why Sati came, that she wanted to make sure that her husband is not being disrespected. And if he is being disrespected, she wanted to take corrective action. Because think of it this way, that Sati Devi is famous for her chastity. Even to this day, when a woman is to be glorified as being particularly chaste, she is called Sati. Later on, some different connotations, but that is the real meaning of Sati, that a woman who is absolutely chaste. So if she had disobeyed her husband, neglected his orders, and simply come to enjoy with her mother and sister, then she would not have been given this exalted position. But her position is actually more exalted now, with understanding that she came here to protect the name of her husband, knowing that she will put her own life and body at risk. And more of this will be revealed in subsequent verses. Okay, so I'll read one more verse, 10, and then we'll stop for any discussion. Jagara samarsha vipanya gira shiva dvisham dhuma pathashram smayam swatejasa bhuta ganan samohe tatan nigraya devi jagato vishanvataha. The followers of Lord Shiva, the ghosts, were ready to injure or kill Daksha. But Sati stopped them by her order. She was very angry and sorrowful. And in that mood, she began to condemn the process of sacrificial fruitive activities and persons who were very proud of such unnecessary and troublesome sacrifices. She especially condemned her father, speaking against him in the presence of all. Sati Devi could have been tolerant if the disrespect was only towards her, right? She had already made that point. She had said, I'm going there to meet my family. And her mother and her sisters were happy to see her. So that part was there. She had also made this implicit point that he's my father. If he disrespects me, it's okay. I will tolerate it. Now, what different has happened here is she has noticed that her husband is being disrespected. She could not tolerate that. So, in the pastime of Vamandev, at the end, Lord Vaman, he ordered Shukracharya to describe that what were the faults and discrepancies in Bali Maharaj's yajna and how should they be corrected. And Shukracharya, he recited this famous verse, Mantratas tantras chiddam desha kala vastutaha sarvam karnoti nischidram anusankirtanam tava. So this is 8th canto, chapter 23, verse 16, where Shukracharya says, there may be discrepancies in pronouncing the mantras and observing the regulative principles, and moreover, there may be discrepancies in regard to time, place, person, and paraphernalia. But when your Lordship's holy name is chanted, everything becomes faultless. Right? So we also say at the end of DT verses, Mantrihinam Kriyahinam Bhaktihinam Janardhana Yat Pujitam Maya Dev. So we several verses, but same mood that we are making so many mistakes, but because we are worshipping you, then please make it complete. So all discrepancies are corrected by the chanting of the holy name. All auspiciousness is established by the chanting of the holy name. Similarly, if you now negate this, that all auspiciousness are destroyed when there is offenses against the holy name. And what is the first offense against the holy name? So we have 10 offenses against the chanting of the holy name. What is the first offense? To blaspheme the devotees who have dedicated their lives for propagating the holy name of the Lord, or Vaishnav Ninda. This is what was happening in the yajna of Daksha. So Daksha's sacrifice was doomed not by Sati, but because of the offenses that he was committing against Lord Shiva. So seeing the anger of Sati, the followers of Lord Shiva became ready to kill Daksha. However, Sati stopped them because she still had some considerations for their material relationship. So Prabhupada says that because there was no respect for the greatest devotee, Lord Shiva, Sati was angry. This was fitting. When Vishnu or a Vaishnava is insulted, one should be angry. Lord Chaitanya, who always preached non-violence, meekness, and humility, also became angry when Nityananda was offended by Jagai Madhai, and he wanted to kill them. The anger of Sati towards her husband or her father was not objectionable. For although he was her father, he was trying to insult the greatest Vaishnava. Thus, Sati's anger against her father was quite applaudable. From the next verse, Sati Devi will speak, and in that speech, she will glorify Lord Shiva and criticize her father. Okay, so I'll pause over here and see if you have any comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Sorry, I was unable to ask question when you passed last time. My audio was going in and out when you were describing about Vasudev and Vasudev connection. And you were telling Vasudev born out of Vasudev. You were giving a different meaning for that. I was unable to follow that. Could you please repeat that?
So Vishwanath Chakravarti actually gives a few meanings to how Vasudev appears. So one of the meaning that he gives is that the meaning of Vasudev with a long A is he who makes his appearance in Vasudev. Right. So the Lord appears in the pure Antakarna, in Shuddha Sattva. Because that Shuddha Sattva is called Vasudev, and because the Lord, so generally the child has the name of the father with the vowel that is expanded. So in Krishna Leela, Krishna's father is Vasudev, and Krishna is called Vasudev, and there the meaning is son of Vasudev. Here he is saying that Vasudev is Shuddha Sattva, and because the Lord is born out of Shuddha Sattva, he is called Vasudeva. Then he gives another meaning also, that Deva means that which is completely spiritual. And Vasu is he says that the Antakarna is called Vasu. So when the Antakarna becomes completely spiritual. So the Antakarna he describes, or it is described as a combination of the mode of ignorance, passion, goodness, and pure goodness. The mode of ignorance is false ego. Mode of passion is intelligence. Mode of goodness is mind. And the mode of pure goodness is Chitta Shakti. So when the Antakarna becomes completely pure, which means all the material modes are removed from it, then it is called Deva, that means it is spiritual. So when Vasu becomes Deva, then the Lord appears. So Vasu refers to the Antakarna, and Deva also refers to that which is completely spiritual. So Vasudev is the Antakarna, is that who appears in the Antakarna that has become completely spiritual. Another meaning and derivation that is given is that he who resides in the pure Antakarana. So he says that the Supreme Lord is Vasati. Vas means to live. So he who resides in the pure Antakarana, Vasati Deva. So that's how the name Vasudev appears. So in all these meanings, the understanding is, it is giving us the sense of how we can come in connection to the Supreme Lord in this very body, in this very state of existence.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Sure.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, just an observation about the Zoom call you were saying. It get disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
I observe that it happen when the sharing of the screen is being done. That means whenever you're speaking and then Prabhu sharing the screen, then this is when it happens. I don't know if it has a connection.
No. That is sharing will be done by me, so it's different.
Yeah, I know you were doing the sharing, but Prabhu was talking. If you, maybe other people can confirm as well, when you were reading the verse, then the disconnection was happening.
Well, I think it's easy to confirm that. Maybe next time I do it from the laptop, Prem Kishore Prabhu, then we'll not share the screen and see if it gives a different result.
Yes,
I
sure,
noticed
Prabhu.
it too, Prabhu.
Hmm?
I said I noticed it too. Whenever Prabhu would start sharing for the few moments, I couldn't hear you, or it was frozen, that kind of a thing.
Maybe there's some connection. Let's try it next time, Prem Kishore. Okay, so if you have no more comments, we'll stop here. Next class on Wednesday, we will discuss the criticism and praise of Sati Devi, and we'll see that she speaks very, very shastrically, in very deep way. So it is at odd with some of the statements that are applied to Sati Devi, that as a weak woman, she was swayed easily and she was crying and affectionate. And then we see these deep realizations out of her. And then we get a sense that essentially Sati Devi is rendering service to her husband more than anything else. That will be revealed. Okay, thank you very much. We'll end here. Vanchakalpatarubhayascha kripa sindhubhya patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.